I wanted to feel like I was a part of something, not because of my usefulness or how it could get me ahead, but because it felt like home. Welcome to the Black Mother Wound podcast, where we center the stories of Black women as we heal from the painful relationships with our mothers. Welcome to the Black Mother Wound podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Arnice. Welcome back, you guys. How are you doing? This is a very good day. Okay. I'm just claiming it for no specific reason. I'm just claiming that it is a good day for me. It is a good day for you, wherever you are, whatever you have going on. It is a good day. And if you can't feel that it's a good day, I want you to stop, drop, and give me 5 things that you appreciate, right? What are 5 appreciations that you can feel in your bones that let you know that today is a good day? This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. That's my old churchness coming out. That's the Pentecostal and the AME Zion coming out in your girl. I think one thing for me is it is finally warmer today. And I took a nice walk this morning and the weather was just like, we are back. We are back. But even if I wouldn't have taken the walk and the weather was not so beautiful out today, I would still know that it's a good day because I have so much to be thankful for. And I'm so happy to be here. Okay. That's my sermon for the day. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and hop in to today's episode because I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know if it's going to be like super long and I don't want to draw things out. Okay. Well, today I want to talk about belonging. And it's sort of like community and it's sort of like belonging. Community is something that we think about like other people and we talk about belonging. I don't feel like I belong anywhere. It's like this external relationship. And you know that healing your mother wound is all about your internal relationship. And I want to talk about primarily internal belonging because that's where it starts. And as you cultivate internal belonging, you can have a feeling of external belonging with others. And it will also feel more natural for you to be in community with others and feel like you belong. Because you might be in community with others, but you don't feel like you belong, right? You are there physically. You might even be there mentally, but you can feel that there's something about it that makes you see yourself as being on the outside, right? And I don't think this is something talked about enough. I know I've heard my students say it most recently about like, they were nervous about joining a group course because they don't do groups, or you hear women say, I don't fool with a lot of women, it's just me by myself, you know what I'm saying? And I can relate to that. And I think I related to it so much that I was like, oh, that's not really, it's nothing to talk about. I'm just an introvert. I just like being by myself. And while I consider myself an ambivert or an extrovert facing introvert. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. What I really had to do was get honest about why I felt that groups weren't the thing for me, why I wasn't in communities with other women. And I felt really self-righteous about it. But then when I would see groups of women genuinely being there for themselves, whether it was like on TV or social media or out in public, I felt this jealousy. right? And that jealousy, I wasn't really conscious of it, so it kind of manifested as this self-righteousness, like, I don't know how they get along. I know there's probably some bullshit going on between them and this and that, you know what I'm saying? I just can't be around that many people. And I'm not saying I'm a large group person or I want that all the time. And maybe there might be BS in some groups, but in some groups, there's genuine care and love and safety. And I wanted to feel that. I had to admit that I wanted to feel that camaraderie. I wanted to feel like I was a part of something, not because of my usefulness or how it could get me ahead, but because it felt like home, right? And that was a very foreign concept for me until I started to dig in and do work around shame and how shame made me feel like I didn't belong. And shame made me feel like everybody else could be included, but not me. I've talked about this in past episodes and I describe it like this when I talk to like my friends. It's like I grew up in the country, right? Like my one of my earliest memories is us living in a single wide trailer and us having a screen door on the front door and having a front door and a screen door. Let me clarify that because we did have a front door and we had a screen door. If you're from the South, you understand. But I don't know if people from the North and Midwest, if y'all do screen doors. But anyway, I digress. Standing in the screen door, looking out at the front yard and realizing I could see what was going on the other side of the screen. I could smell what was going on the other side of the screen out in the yard. I could hear what was happening on the other side of the screen out in the yard. But if I tried to engage with that space physically, I was met with the barrier of the screen, right? And if you look at a screen from far away, it almost disappears. It's just when you get close up on it that you can see the grids, the horizontal and vertical grids of the screen. And that's how I have described my experience with shame and my feeling of being excluded. It's like being at a candy store, you like with your nose pressed up against the glass, seeing everybody else enjoy life, and you're on the outside of that. That was my experience with shame. And that was my experience with belonging. And I didn't like that feeling. So I started to explore the ways that I thought I was broken, the ways that I kept myself separate from others. And I realized the ways that I kept myself separate were taught to me by my mother. And one of the big ways, and that's why I don't talk about religious trauma. I probably should do an episode on religious trauma, but this whole concept of being in the world, but not of the world, and which I think is can be a very self-righteous concept where we couldn't do what other people did. We didn't dress like other people dressed. We didn't listen to the music other people listened to. We didn't go places that regular mainstream everyday people went to because, we were Pentecostal. We were holy and we were different and we were on, I don't think she looked at it as the outside. We were just somewhere else. But as a young girl, I was on the outside. And even living in our house, I was on the outside. I wasn't like her. I was a butterfly. I was free. I was curious. I had a sense of adventure. I don't remember being fearful as a small child. I loved glam. I loved getting my nails done or pretending to have my nails done. I would take scotch tape and tape it to my fingers and then find a magic marker and color it. And those would be my fake nails. This is like in kindergarten and first grade. That was the devil's work. Okay. Because my mother was not about any type of vanity or adornment. And even on a emotional level, we did not connect There was no emotional connection between us. There was no mental connection. Our physical connection was we lived in the same house. She cooked our food. She kept us clean. She took us to and fro where we had to go. And that was it. And I grew up feeling like Cinderella when I look back on it. It was like the word, even inside my house, she and my brother, just growing up in my house, it was two different worlds. And I didn't belong. And then I didn't belong at school because I went to an elementary school. I went to a Pentecostal private school, and it was run in the church. So it was like a small private school, and I was the only black person in the school. Not the black person in my class. I was the only black person in the school. Okay? I was bigger than everybody else. I couldn't wear pants. So even though it was in Christian school, the girls there, they dressed in secular clothing. I was the only girl that came to school every day in skirts or culottes. I couldn't listen to secular music. I was an outsider in every way that you could imagine. And I believe like that was by design by my mother, because it was like, when the Lord comes back, when Jesus comes back, he going to recognize her. He going to say, who's that little miserable little child over there with the skirt on? She must be a Christian. She going to go up in the rapture. But that was how my life of not belonging began, because I never felt like I was good enough. I never felt like there was a place for me. And I looked up the word belonging, and it says to be a member of or property of. Now, I was the property of my mother, right? But I was not a member of like her club. I don't think she had a club. I don't think there was anybody that was a member of her club. And she probably had things that happened in her life that made her also feel like an outsider, right? And then so belonging, I looked up and the definition says an affinity for a place or a situation, an emotionally safe place or situation. And I did not grow up feeling like there were safe places for me. I would go visit my aunt who lived next door to us when I was a teenager. She had a safe place. I did, as I'm thinking about her, my Aunt Maggie, I did feel like I belonged with her. When I tell you we used to laugh and cut up, and when I was 14, she probably was already in her 50s or 60s. She was born in the 20s. But baby, we would be watching Matlock, and she would be teaching me how to sew when we'd be eating almond joys, and we used to have a ball. And I had another neighbor across the street, Miss Dale, who was an older white woman who was also born in the 20s. And I would go to her house, and I always felt like I belonged. I was always so welcome. She would give me sweet tea and chocolate chip cookies and makeup, because she loved makeup. And she had a whole bunch of Avon, and she would always make sure I had some makeup. And she had a little teacup, not a teacup, a toy poodle who had painted fingernails. I would never forget that. And I used to feel at home there. So it's interesting now, just thinking back, those parts of my childhood when I felt like I did belong and who I was in those spaces, that's who I really was. That's who I really am to this day. When I think back, I'm like, oh, I'm the same girl. I am the same little girl at 50 as I was when I was 7 and 8 and 14, hanging with those women. But I didn't believe that was possible anywhere else, because the majority of my life I was always on the outside. And I believe that I was also really, opinionated and outspoken, and there were just so many factors. Everything that I wanted, I was ahead of my time. That's what it was. I was ahead of my time, but there was no one there to tell me, Jennifer, you're just ahead of your time. They haven't caught up to you yet. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to change. The world is still safe for you. It was more so like, if you do not get your shit in order, you are not going to make it in this world, right? Because who wants to be with or around someone like you? And when you learn that early on, whether that was the intentional lesson or not, it's very hard to buck it. It's hard to get out of that saddle. And I realize a lot of people, because I see their comments. Ooh, I see their comments, and I want to squeeze them and I want to hug them. And it's like, I've tried to be around people and I've been hurt and burnt so many times. It's too late. I'm just going to be by myself, just me and myself. It's too much trouble. And I'm just like, if you knew the joy in having a safe space of people around you where you could show up and know that you were cared for and know that you were loved and know that you were valued, you would trade all of it in a minute. And I also understand if you've had your put your hand on a stove and it be burned many times, your body won't even let you touch the stove again. So I want to introduce a new method for approaching community and belonging, and how it starts with the relationship you have with yourself, and go from there. And I will say this, oftentimes the communities that we go into that we regret being in mimic the community of the home we were raised in. Even if we didn't like it, that's what we're comfortable with. And we go in there with the perspective of being the person that had to keep herself safe in those communities. And so building belonging with yourself creates a different way for you to show up, not for others, but for yourself, so that you no longer fit into those places that weren't healthy for you. You're no longer attracted to those places, and you bring a different energy, which attracts different people, opportunities, situations into your life. But it all starts with how we're relating to ourselves. It's like, do I even belong to myself? Am I even a member of my own club? And you know, if you're a member of your own club by how you talk to yourself. Do you believe yourself? Do you believe in yourself? Do you trust yourself? Right? Do you trust the decisions that you're making? Do you believe in your yearnings and your desires? Do you listen to yourself? Do you take your own advice? How do you soothe yourself when you feel low or down? Like, that's how you know, do you even belong to yourself, or am I in the Jennifer Arnice club? So that's what I want you to do first before you venture out and attempt to, I want to say, almost like performatively belong in these other spaces without doing this very, very important work. This is like the requirement work. This is like 101 before you move to the next class, 201. And what I want to say is belonging is not fitting in. You know what I mean? Like, well, let me see how I can fit in. And it's also not pretending to be something that you're not. That is not fitting in. We look at that as fitting in because that's what we had to do as children in our households. We had to pretend to be something that we're not, and we had to fit into whatever that plan was because our survival depended on it. But now, and I hope that you've been doing the work that ensures that you are safe and creating a safe environment and a environment of trust with yourself, to where you can now show up authentically for yourself first. Everything that I want you to do out in the world, you have to be able to do it with yourself first and have a really solid, consistent pattern of it, so you can go out and test it in the wild. And the belonging I'm talking about is not a physical belonging. It's like how you relate to yourself, and in turn, like how you relate to others, right? I want you to think about how you relate to yourself and how you relate to others. Just hold that like a little piece of candy in your mouth as we go through this, right? Because our mothers oftentimes damage the way that we related to ourselves and others based off how she treated us. She taught me who I was and how I should see myself. So then that's how I should treat myself. I should treat myself like I'm guilty. I should treat myself like I'm a problem. I should treat myself like I'm scattered. I should relate to myself really like I'm my own enemy. I should have some type of guard up against myself. I can't trust my own thinking. And then I went out and realized that's how I related to the world. I didn't trust anyone out in the world. I didn't think people had my best interest. I didn't think there was anyone who had my best interest at heart. Okay. How I saw the world was just a reflection of how I saw myself, because your family is your first community. And unfortunately, our mothers, for many of us, were our first bullies. She was the first bully on the playground. And a bully can be silent or loud. A bully is the one who can just make you feel like you're alone in the group because everybody goes and stands behind them because they don't want to challenge her. And you're left to fend for yourself. And it sends a resounding message to that little girl that she will never be a part of anything. She will never be a member. And it's her fault because it can't be my mother's fault because she's my mother. I love her. How could it be her? It must be me. So let me go and fix me. And without this protection from her, first of all, without her protection and without her saying, hey, you're mine, you belong to me, we're in this together. And I talk about my dad from time to time in episodes. What I appreciate about him was he felt like he belonged. My father had a great big old sense of belonging. Wherever he was, he felt like he belonged to be there. And I know his father died young, and I know his mother gave him that. And I believe his community and his extended family of aunts and cousins made him feel like he belonged. And he would say, so my last name is Carter. And he would be like, we Carters. Like that was our belonging. And that was a big deal. And everybody in our family and community knew that's who we were. And his thing was, I'm the shit and you come from me. You belong to me. So you must be the shit too. So how do we start to feel like we belong? And what did I do so I could begin to feel like I belonged to myself and therefore created a opening for belonging in other spaces with people and even being a part of communities? I think even when I started Black Mother Wound, I don't believe I felt like I belonged. You know, I only, I think the feeling of belonging only started when I was able to really hear people say, I thought I was the only one. And it having Black Mother Wound really started probably because I wanted to find out. It was like waving a flag, like, is there anybody else out there like me? And it was incredibly vulnerable, of course, to be out here and tell my business and talk about my mama. Like, it was incredibly vulnerable. And I think I'm already telling you, that's one of the big pieces. One of the big pieces of learning that you belong is sharing. Me letting people see me. And it felt extremely risky because here I am publicly sharing, right? Not even in a small space, but in this, like, let me just throw this out here in the whole wide world and see what happens. And I have never regretted it. And I think that it has also inspired others to be like, oh, I'm not by myself. Because that's how we go around and we're relating in the world, like there's no one like me. And if you feel like there's no one like you, there's no one who has an experience like yours, it's impossible for you to belong. How can you be a member if there's no one else? You're in this club alone. So I'm really thankful to Black Mother Wound because it really was a catalyst on me. When I say being in community, I don't mean as a community builder, but just me being one of the club, one of the members of the club. And not like, oh, this is the service I provide to others and I facilitate. You know, I'm not a member based off of my usefulness and the way I galvanize people together, because that's the only way people would want to be around me, is if I provide something that I can give to them. Be careful with that one, because there are a lot of people who are involved in groups, but they still feel like an outsider because they have to maintain a certain level of control. And so I'm not, I might experience these things, but I always have to be the teacher, the organizer, the controller of everything that's going on. I have to have all the answers, right? Where y'all know I still be going through it. I'm still in the healing process, and I talk and relate with y'all from that perspective. I'm not up on no high horse, right? I don't live an aspirational life. I don't have an aspirational healing journey. Mean it's like something that you could never have, you know? And as soon as I get something, I try to give it to y'all because I don't want there to be a lot of space between what I'm able to do and what you're able to do. Now, if y'all are just coming in, then, and you're just coming in learning and listening here, then there might be more steps, but you can catch up. You really can. You can not only could you catch up, you can catch up and you can pass me. That's what I want you to do. I want you to catch up and I want you to pass me so I could be like, oh, where's she going? I want to go. I want to go. Because if she can do it, I can do it, right? Because we're in the same club. But I don't want you to belong to groups. When I say belonging, I mean from a physical space, because you're the facilitator, because you're useful, because that can be a trap, and it can be a way that you really tell your inner little girl that you're still not safe, that somehow you still have to be on the outside. And that's why vulnerability is critical to belonging, and it's critical to true community. It's critical. You have to share. You have to show who you are, right? You have to show people who you are. There has to be a level of authenticity. That's why trying to fit in doesn't work. Okay. There are already going to be things that you have in common. Leave it there. After that, just be yourself, right? So what else did I do? I stopped trying to fit in. I stopped trying to make myself useful. I was vulnerable and let people see me. I set boundaries around my needs. That was hard for me because for me to belong, that means that goes with the being useful. I need to say yes to everything. I need to be the one giving all the time. And I had to set boundaries around that. I had to give myself permission to receive, because in a community, it's about reciprocity. And if I'm giving, others will be giving. And for me to deny receiving from others is rude. It's rude and disrespectful. So when people try to be there for you and give to you and you don't receive it, it's rude. And I don't mean rude from the perspective of like etiquette rude. I mean it's disrespectful, because you know how you feel when you give to others, and you rob people of the opportunity to feel that way, to feel good. about doing something. You take that away from them, right? And there's no way that you can be in community with others when you do that. And I'm going to take it a step further. Are you able to give to yourself? Right? Are you able to receive from yourself? Or are you being rude and disrespectful to yourself? And receiving is just not about physical things. Like, baby, I take good care of me. I go to the nail salon, I get my hair done. It's beyond that. Can you receive compliments from yourself? Can you receive encouragement from yourself? It's beyond the physicals of a facial and a spa day to say, oh, yeah, I give to myself all the time. I take myself out to dinner. Those are nice, but are you able to receive rest? If I say, oh, girl, you are really tired. You need to relax. You need to turn the laptop off. You need to just lay for a little while. You know, can I receive good advice from myself? Those are things too that you have to learn to receive. Okay. So just keep that in mind. And then I got curious about people and was open to letting people be curious about me. Right. I was raised that you don't really ask people a bunch of questions about themselves. It's like you're being intrusive. And because I have some very heavy codependent tendencies, I feel responsible if I say something, that will make them feel a certain way. But in belonging and building community, there has to be a level of curiosity. And that includes curiosity about your own self, right? We have these oftentimes stagnant views about who we are and what we want and what we like and what we've been doing this whole time. And it's like, am I even curious about myself? Do I even like that anymore? I've been doing the same thing, going to the same place, wearing the same stuff, talking the same talk. Something over there caught my eye, but it's kind of different. I'm curious. I'm going to get curious about that. What made you say that, Jennifer? What made you think about that? Why are you having this conversation with yourself? Like, I am so curious about myself. And to be curious, you cannot still be critical. We have mastered being critical, and there can be no sense of belonging with being critical. There is none. And that's why we're probably oftentimes not in community, because we're so accustomed to being met with someone being critical of us. So then we become critical of ourselves, and we expect that to be what we're going to find out in spaces. But I started to just be curious, more lighthearted about things I was interested in, things I was doing. Even when I felt bad, it's like, instead of you shouldn't feel that way, it's like, what made you feel that way? Like, what's your thought process, girl? Like, I'm interested in me. I'm interested in me. I'm a very interesting person. And you're probably a very interesting person if you would let yourself see you. If you would let yourself see you, you don't even feel safe enough to let you see you. That's why I'm telling you, this sense of belonging has to start internally. It has to start with the relationship that you have with yourself, right? And in that curiosity, what you also are going to become is more self accepting of you, which is also going to make you less stressful. A lot of your stress is because of the ways that you reject yourselves. Anywhere that you are feeling stressful, I want you to ask, where am I rejecting myself right now? Where am I rejecting myself? Get curious about that. Okay. I also deprioritize productivity. That goes back to the thing of being useful. It's like, is the main goal to be productive right now, or is it to enjoy myself? Sometimes I have to clearly decide, because if not, I'll be conflicted and then I'll beat myself up. But it's like, is this a productivity day, or is this a roll in the grass, smell the flowers type of day? Or are we going to split it up? But deprioritizing productivity allows us to see that our value is in who we are and not what we do. And when you can prioritize your being over your doing, now you feel like, oh, I might be able to flow in certain areas more. I can chill. I can relax. And when you can chill and you can relax, you can go into settings with others with a more regulated nervous system, and you can enjoy yourself much more and you can see things differently because you're not as defensive. And I explored things because I enjoyed them, not because I wanted to be good at them. That's another thing about belonging, right? Belonging to myself. It's like, what's something I want to do even if I'm not good at it? Even if it takes me a long time to be good at it, even if I'm never good at it. Being able, that's why I love swimming. Y'all know I can find a way to bring the topic of swimming into anything, right? Because it is my masogi right now. It's everything. That's all I can tell y'all. Watch my weekend vlog. This is like a shameless plug. 1 second. My vlog from last week. I posted my swim lesson in there and talked a little bit about that. It's so good. Ooh, it's so good, child. Okay, but anyway, being able to let yourself do something because you enjoy it and you're not good at it makes you feel like you belong. It's like, oh, that's good enough. That's all I had to do. Oh, that I can do that all day long, right? But you have to be okay with not being good at it. And you have to have created a space where you know you keep yourself safe. So the critique from you is not allowed, critique from others is not allowed, and you can really enjoy. Because belonging is a natural state. I'm trying to get you to just get back to your natural state because naturally, without our trauma, without our mother wounds, we feel like we belong and we do belong. It's our natural state. This work I'm trying to get you to do is so you can get back to your natural state, like who you really are. Okay. And the more you do this work with yourself, the more easily you are able to be in community with others because community is one of the pillars of reparenting. You cannot reparent yourself properly without community. It's great being a part of the Black Mother Wound community, whether it's through YouTube, the podcast, the Resolve course. I also want you to build community in your everyday lives because you deserve it. There is so rich. There's so many benefits to it. And I also understand the fears around it. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today because I wanted to give you a different approach to it and just try it. Like I said last week, it's baby steps. Just try it. And there will be a natural evolution of it. It's not something that's going to happen all at once. I'm still growing in community. I'm still learning how to be in community. I'm still learning how not to think I have to make myself valuable in order to feel like I belong. I can just be here. I can be a participant. And so for some of y'all that are in lots of groups, try just being a participant, not an organizer, not somebody that's sending all the emails and the texts out and making sure everybody get this right and get that right. And just try taking care of you and being a participant. It might feel odd in the beginning, but boy, you're like, oh, this is nice. This is what I deserve. I deserve just to be a member in the group and I don't have to be running everything. So it goes a certain kind of way because it can't fall, it can't fail, all this kind of stuff. Okay. I hope this has been helpful. I will probably be talking about this some more. So you may see another episode about this because It's a critical piece. And I think it's one of the most challenging spaces when it comes to healing our mother wound, is this feeling that we don't belong because we were taught it so long ago, right? Especially if you were raised in a space where you were also isolated and you didn't feel like you got to belong in school. I didn't get to belong in school. I wasn't raised around like my mother's family. I couldn't go out and play with the kids in my neighborhood. So if you were also someone who was a victim of a lot of childhood isolation, you never got that chance to feel like people saw you and were like, oh, yeah, you're going to be on our team. Come on, play with us, type of thing. This is for you, especially. I love you. I will talk to you next week. If you need me, you know where to find me. And I'll see you later. Bye.